Welcome, everybody. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's start with the approval of minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look it over? Any additions, corrections? I have a motion then to accept. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passed. Okay, let's get right into our resolutions. The first resolution is appointing members to the Oswego County Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors. This is an annual appointment to the Soil and Water, and each of the members that were up have been asked if they wanted to return. They do. Two of them are legislators, myself and Linda Lockwood. So could I have a motion to discuss at least?
Let me make that motion.
Second. Any questions about the adoption of them? Appointing them, I will have to not vote on it because of conflict, because I am one of them. But all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? One abstention. Passes. Second resolution, fixing the time and place for a public hearing relative to the requests of landowners' inclusion within the existing certified agricultural district pursuant to New York State Ag and Market Law. This is strictly to set the date and time for the meeting for those new members, the ledge, that don't understand the process. In January, all the way across New York State, the Department of Ag and Markets opens up the opportunity for people that think that their land could be considered agricultural land. They have to go to their local cooperative extension, get an application, fill it out, where they give it to the county collects it, then the real property gets involved with taking pictures of anybody that was interested. Cornell goes out and visits it, and then we have a meeting. I'm the chairman of that particular Farmland Protection Board, and our meeting is set for March 18th, and we will go over all of the applications if they meet the criteria. Now, this has nothing to do with tax waivers or anything. This is strictly the right to farm. So that if somebody wants to be able, they have livestock, crops, food processing that they believe should be protected, so that the neighbor moves in and says, oh, wait a minute, I don't like that milk pump going off at 5 o'clock in the morning. If they're in an ag district, they have a right to be able to say, no, that's my right to farm. However, if they have the milk pump running at an extremely loud thing and they do it all day long, that's outside of the parameter of general practice. So they can't do it. So it's not like just because you're in there, you can do anything you want. So anyway, so once the board meets, and if we approve it, then we bring the names we have a date, which would be our next legislative meeting. We bring the property and the landowner's names up to vote. And so we vote on them. If we approve it, then it goes to the State Department of Ag and Markets. They have to approve it, and then it goes on the roll that they are part of the ag district. And there are ag districts throughout New York State and different ones. So, do I have a motion to at least discuss at this point?
I'll move it.
Second? Any comments?
How many applications do you know you got this year?
Don't know. Won't know until we have the meeting. They've collected them all. I know they have several. And from my understanding, generally 95% of them get approved. Sometimes you have some of them that when they meet in the meeting, they're like, well, somebody has a chicken and they feel that they should have this exemption. Well, that's not really farming now,
So the application process is closed?
Yes, only January 1 to January 31st every year. So that's the only time that it's open. They only do it because it gets way too confusing. So it's one time, and that's Ag and Markets has just, decided that. Any other questions?
Well, this might be a silly question, but since I'm learning.
Yeah, that's okay.
There are a lot of districts that are already slated agricultural districts. Let's say a street or whatever. Are these people that are looking for a residential
No.
switching the area?
No. That once again, let's say that somebody in the middle of Phoenix decided they wanted to be in it. And if they applied, we'd say you can't.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
there's already. Now,
right.
That's interesting though, because if you apply for an ag district,
Mhm.
and where you're applying for, there's no local ordinance against farming,
Okay.
we will get you an ag district.
Right.
However, if you decide what you say, I want to do it, but you're in the middle of Phoenix, sorry, there's ordinance against
Mhm.
it. There was just a whole thing that just went on in Mexico, that Mexico, after some people had been in ag districts for years, they had cows, they had horses,
Mhm.
the village of Mexico decided, well, we don't want horses in the village area.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry, these people grandfathered in, they are an ag district. They went in legally, they are protected. So, there it is. So it did help these people that they didn't have to sell, they could still continue doing what they were doing. Any other, David?
So, well, for your benefit as well, years ago, we had ag districts scattered all over the county, and we took an action to consolidate those. So even though the parcels are everywhere, we have one district. It's called District 11, because at the time we had 11 different districts. But so there's in the application that Mary Ellen discussed, there's various questions about what is it that you do, what do you think you qualify for, and if you can demonstrate that your property is being used, maybe not by you, but maybe you rent it to somebody else for growing crops or something. There's a process that's pretty thorough, and the Farmland Protection Board is made up of various farmers in different areas of agriculture. And so it gets a pretty thorough review. And as she said, it doesn't impact your real property tax, but in some cases it could save that person some money on like a water district, where otherwise you would be paying on frontage costs. If your agricultural district, there's a formula to reduce that cost so that farmers aren't paying way above for property that will never be used for the water.
Isn't there a minimum acreage on that? Isn't it be like, used to be 50 acres or something?
No, it's less than that. I know it's less than that, but that's
So
other smaller.
what I'm gonna bring forward is I had a neighbor who had a landscaping business, and he's been there for quite a while.
Mhm.
And we had a neighbor move in, who first of all decided that she needed to take everything and make it her business. So, and there was quite a bunch of confusion over it. So he came to me and said, do you think I could qualify for an ag district? I said, yeah, I think there's minimum acreage, but I don't know. So he checked on it and got his nursery in an ag district.
Yeah, nursery would qualify, yeah.
Yeah, nursery would
So
go.
it's not just cows, horses.
Right.
It could be,
Greenhouses,
Could be a woodlot.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have 20 acres of forest
Now
that
you
they
probably
manage.
get a lot of
Right.
marijuana.
well, yeah, because that would be an agricultural hemp.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it would be. But as I say, that it's entirely different than the ag exemption. That's a whole other
Yes,
process.
gotcha.
But it is, it's just, we're trying to keep agricultural land, agriculture, and to allow people to farm within reason, to do what they're supposed to do. Because as we get the encroachment, people don't like that milk pump on, they don't want the, they don't want to smell the manure.
Yeah.
Think about it before you move there. Anyways, can I have a motion to accept?
I think we did
Oh, we already did, yes. All in favor?
Alright.
Any opposed? Okay, pass. Okay, let's get into the reporting departments. David, you want to talk about the first one? I think we're going to be tabling the first.
Yeah, so we were going to discuss and ask for some consideration for a contract amendment to the public transit contract. This came to us from OCO because they made their proposal to us last May, and fuel prices and labor shortages and labor prices have increased dramatically, and they sent an official request to consider adjusting their contract to address those issues. But in the meantime, we have some communication from State Department of Transportation, and there's a process and a form that they want completed. That it would seem like we should have had this for the last 40 years, but no one's ever said anything, and I don't know why we didn't have it in the beginning. And Rich has done a real thorough search of the records to try to see if it ever did happen. But bottom line is, in order for us to do that, he's discovered that we need to have a local law that authorizes us to enter into those types of agreements and services. So we're going to table this discussion, or we'd like to ask to table it until we can go through that process. So next month, we'll have a resolution request to set the time and place for a public hearing on that local law, and the content of that local law we'll have available to you at that time.
So you think we'll have it for next month?
We'll request, similar to this one, we'll request to set the public hearing. The public hearing will be like May, I guess.
Okay, so it's around the road.
Yeah.
Okay, David, do you have any other questions?
Well, what is the total cost to us? I know we get,
Zero.
this is still zero, everything's zero.
Yeah.
Even though the buses are empty, speeding, and ever since I complained, they tinted all their windows, which I thought was illegal. Why aren't they doing something more cost-effective for fuel? They could easily do with half the size of the bus and do something that's
So,
energy efficient.
yeah, the state won't allow us to use smaller vehicles. We've asked many times in the last couple of years.
Would I call the state DOT, Sean Hennessy? Who would I call?
So you have to get to the transit division,
Okay,
and I can get you the name of the person that you could speak to. We requested a waiver so that we could use smaller, more efficient vehicles on certain routes, and they've been silent on that.
I'm gonna request it through the governor's office. This is ridiculous.
I agree, Marie. I know
It's
it's.
a total waste.
Mhm.
I'm watching them fly all over. They're empty. Friends of ours have ridden the bus the entire day, and it's a ghost bus. They're empty.
Yeah.
So you complain they tint the windows. If we tint the windows, we get arrested, right? Well, at least we just be released. But this is absurd. It's a waste, and it goes against everything. Everyone's trying to save energy.
Mhm.
It's
I totally agree, and I know I've been on this committee for at least the last 2, if not 3 years, and I know we have requested these smaller buses over and over again in the state DOT.
Nobody wants to work in this general area anyway. Don't worry about it. They're not gonna get on the bus.
Well, we're, and as of the last meeting, the ridership is beginning to come back after COVID.
Well, I
So we're
can't even
finally
get a
starting to
manifest. You can't find out how many wrote it.
There you go.
Yeah, you can.
Who's gonna give it to me?
Tell us what you'd like to know, and I can, give me specifics about what you want to see, and I'll get
I
it for
would
you.
love to know college route. Let's say,
We don't do college routes.
That's Central, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Central.
Central.
That's
Yeah.
Central, just college route.
all right, Oswego County. How many people have ridden, like, for the month of January?
I'll get that for you.
I wish I had remembered it, but we just had a report, and it'd be amazing how many rides that they have provided. It's thousands.
I just see people getting off the bus by the theater with
We don't, that's not our
roll-alongs.
bus either.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
they're coming in for the housing.
We would like to have some of those routes, but Central has an opportunity to just,
Central's got the college route.
they basically can come in and just say, we want that route, and take it away from you if they see that it's profitable.
Once it becomes profitable.
Yeah, so ours basically closes the gap between what they've already,
And they've reduced the rates now.
yeah.
It's $1 to go unless you have to be exchanged to another route, and then it's another $1. But it's $1. It used to be $2, now it's $1 one way. So they're making it less expensive so more people ride. They're trying to get people onto it. So,
Can't get any cheaper than that.
no, you really can't.
Yeah.
I do.
Right.
Right here.
Been waiting for
Oh, I'm
5
sorry.
minutes. It's okay. So we've been trying to work to reorganize the routes for a long time. And Mel's Transportation Committee has been doing a pretty good job of that. I know it's taken way too long. COVID was a terrible hit,
Yes.
but I think we're on our way to something that is more workable for the county. That first mile, last mile fills the gap to get more people to the buses. I've been trying to push for something that works closer with some of the businesses to try to be able to have something that functions on a daily basis, but we're really not there yet. But a question to you, Dave. So with us having to create this local law, are you saying that we really don't have the authority to contract to do any of this stuff?
Well, the state says, because we've had this contract, or we've had a contract forever, we've been performing this service forever, we had the same provider, we did the procurement properly for the last,
We just don't have the
no.
overriding authority to do it.
they're saying that we have the authority to continue what we're doing, but that in order to be totally compliant, we have to have this other form. In order for us to be able to meet the conditions of the terms on that form, we need to pass a local law that says we have the authority to
And in the
take
short
those
term, that's
steps.
not going to impact any funding that we have coming in.
No.
Okay, thank you.
It was a good thought, Roy.
Yeah, that was our first-
Well, I just want to clarify, I mean,
Yes, that would be-
I know stuff gets overlooked over time, but, that's kind of a biggie.
That was our first concern as well. Well,
Yeah, it was a surprise. Like I say, well,
we've seen a lot in the last 2 years that the state and federal government are saying, you should do this, you should do that. And I said, well, that makes sense. And well, how come nobody ever said anything to us? And
Yeah.
like, well, we don't know. We just thought of it. It's,
any other questions about that? Okay, Dave, any other department updates?
sometime very soon, I'm going to come to you and talk about the need to redo the tourism website. The last one we did was in 2018 for the county website, and the tourism website is probably 10 or 12 years old and really needs a lot of work. It could be more effective and efficient, and give you some time to think about that. But when we established the capital project for the county website, you allocated $100,000 for that capital project, and in the 5 years that we've had it, I think the contract term was about $70,000. So just for a point of reference, probably looking at something close to that for the tourism website. It may not be as much because we have a better base to build from than we had with the county website. So we may be able to get it done for less money. I'm not asking for that today, but I'm throwing it on the table so you can think about it and we can have a discussion at a later time.
We don't have the talent in-house then?
No.
Great.
Have you thought of having a conversation with the college? There's some serious graphic talent out there.
Yeah, we need more
They
than
love
graphics. We need coders, and I mean, there's so much stuff in the back end of a really good website that you need somebody that really specializes in that work. And they have people who are learning that, but what they don't have is a support network to do the hosting, daily maintenance, make sure that when something happens, you got somebody to call and say, hey, this isn't working, you need to fix it. So we could get some like design work maybe from somebody, but we wouldn't ever be able to have like a service agreement with a student.
Yeah, well, with David there, you've got your design talent.
Yeah.
Any other questions for David? You got any other updates, Dave?
Yeah, I had a request from a farmer to look into a community development block grant program using CARES money that is designed to provide housing for farm workers and migrant workers. A lot of the agricultural sectors that use migrant workers have had housing forever. If you've ever seen it, most of it's not that great. No disrespect to any of those farmers, but it's just the way it is. This money would allow you to work with a farmer for up to $200,000 on any individual farm. So if they would replace, and it says this specifically in the application, replace existing housing with a new manufactured housing unit. I don't know how many you could get on a site. By the time my guess is water and sewer is already at most of these places. We probably need a new pad, but I think when we did the veterans housing program where we took old trailers and replaced them with manufactured homes, they were coming in then at like $140,000 a unit. I don't know what they would be now, but I think 200 you're going to end up one housing structure per farm at that price. You can apply for up to $1 million. The application has to be by municipality. It can't be by the farmers themselves. So,
Now, this is an application strictly for agriculture?
yes.
I would think a farmer is a private enterprise, and so what difference is it? A manufacturer wants to have people there that we would pay for his housing? I mean, I'm positive for agriculture, but I'm just like, why would we get money for somebody's personal business?
Exactly.
Well,
They're making
like-
a profit.
They're making the profit. It's for them to have workers there, but
this is more about providing safe and healthy conditions for the migrant workers.
Well, wouldn't
The
they
owners
be
ought to be doing.
under legal action if they weren't?
yeah. Shouldn't somebody go after the farmer to
They
say
make
you need to have
decent
proper
money.
rental properties?
Exactly.
I'm just telling you that
Yeah.
a farmer who uses those services contacted me and said, would the county be interested in applying for this money? I, for one, would really like the help for housing on my farm, and there's probably others who would as well. And I'm just communicating to you that the state has this program, and we have this request, and I bring it to your attention because, it's writing and managing projects like this is a lot of work, and we're willing to take it on, but not if you don't think that it's a worthwhile endeavor.
I'd like to hear the requirements to be able to live there and utilize that versus illegals being shipped up here and just housed because they're housing them everything. So
Yeah.
who can live in this, I guess, would be my question.
Marie?
Is this a grant he's
Yes,
looking for?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he and his accountant apply for the grant?
it's only municipalities are eligible. It's federal money, and it was allocated for various purposes, but it's basically more CARES money that they put into a pot and said, use it for this purpose.
So it will cost us time and hours and.
It's 5% of the grant we can get for administration.
How big are these grants?
This particular one, you can apply for up to $1 million. So if we had 5 farms that, we wouldn't be able, we probably could do 5 farms. 5 farms, $1 million, we'd get 5% of that for our efforts.
So would we be looking for the farms that are interested ahead of time, rather than like with the block grants that we did before, we were always looking for people afterwards to?
Yeah, so that was the first thing that I responded to this particular farmer. I said, do you know anybody else who would be interested in using these funds? And I haven't heard back from him yet. I mean, this was just yesterday, so.
But I agree with that, is to find out exactly who is eligible to be there. in these and who monitors it,
Yeah.
that they're not all of a sudden, we have them now, but all of a sudden we have other people that are moving in and utilizing this. Is there some kind of, who's overseeing it a year from now or whatever?
Right.
If there is any oversight, I don't know, according to the grant. But-
Well, they're meant to house farm workers. I don't know if we're gonna get in the business of driving around the farms and making sure that no one else is living there off
Right.
season.
Right,
But
true. Okay. Any other questions?
Well,
Okay,
what's
well, I guess.
What's the next step?
Yeah.
To deciding whether we want to do this or not? It's up to,
if you said to me today, nah, Dave, that sounds like a waste of time, it's too much work, and that we don't really like that initiative, then I'll just say the county's doesn't have the capacity to make this application and run the program right now.
would Cornell Cooperative Extension be able to
No.
locate
Oh, would they be able to locate
farmers
farmers?
that would be, I mean, if we had a bulk of them who said, yeah, well, it's, or if they were aware of a bunch of places that had really terrible housing,
If we're gonna do it,
if we're gonna do it, I mean, it'd be nice to have all the farms that were, enough to get whatever we're gonna ask for ahead of time.
Yeah, so I think this guy would know the other people who use this type of labor as well, and he's been very active in the agricultural community for a long time. And I had planned on calling a few of the farmers that I personally know and asking them whether they have a need or not. So
and I think your requirement extension would also know.
Yeah.
They generally have a good feel too for,
mhm.
you don't want just the ones that he's aware of, there might be some that you don't, so if we're
Right.
gonna,
Well, we can only do 5, so
okay, let's see if there's, a good chance that there is 5 of them in the county that would be able to
Maybe
help.
it should be a lottery system. They all should put their name in it.
well, if there's more than 5, yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
It doesn't have to be the county. You said it's a municipality that has to apply for it?
Could be city,
It
town,
could be thrown
village.
back on whatever townships, village to do it instead of us, yeah.
Well, no disrespect to any of those folks, but quite frankly, these applications are pretty involved, and
David would end up helping him, so it's easier.
we'd end
for
up
him to
doing
do
it anyways. They really don't have the capacity internally to manage this kind of program.
Dave, you just said you just learned about this yesterday, correct?
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any strings attached in terms of for the county for auditing purposes to, like you said, to determine if they're documented people in them versus undocumented or for the farmer to do auditing or other sorts of, what sort of strings are attached and for how long if someone is to accept this money?
The grant may have those strings.
Yeah, I haven't read the full application. It was announced on Sunday. The governor's office announced it, and on Monday I got a message from the farmer. So
Okay, so they were very aware of it.
yeah,
Well, I'd say look at it, see what you got, and bring it back next month. We'll see if, how many farmers, and as Reese said, if there's more than 5, it could be a matter of a lottery. I mean, if the money's
Yeah.
there, governor's giving it, so,
well, I'd like to get a general feel today. Quite frankly, right now I don't even know what the application deadline is. But if I have to wait till next month to kind of get your blessing, it might really give us a problem
well,
getting the application done.
I think we've had some discussion here that I think, go ahead, and unless the how do they feel, that we should at least pursue it to find out more information.
I think
We need more than we've got.
Yeah, I have a general feel for what your concerns are, and if the application deadline, I think, is problematic, would you be okay if I respond like by email to you and say, here's the things I found out regarding your questions, and if you don't want this to go forward, then you need to tell me now, otherwise we really need to get started. But if the deadline is like June, that's not a problem.
Okay. Well, if you have that extra information, we could do a short meeting right before Ledge next week.
Exactly.
So we could do that, if you can see what your
So what do
information
we
is, if
wanna
the
know?
deadline is such that we have to find out. Get the information for us right before Ledge, and then if not, if it's out there, then you can just report next month. How's
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Anything else, Dan?
One final thing, I'm going to email you because we don't have any paper and I'm probably already in trouble for printing these pages. We finally got the broadband survey report done. We did a regional project with 5 counties out of the Central New York region. You'll note when you get these in your email that the report is 262 pages long. I'm only sending you a summary of what our likely next steps should be going forward. So you can take a look at that, what our options are, and we can discuss that hopefully at the next meeting. Broadband is going to, I hear repeatedly that it's one of the primary priorities for the legislature. It's going to be a big project. It's going to be expensive. I talked to a planner in Herkimer County that they did some calculations on a build out, and what did I tell you the other day, Phil? It was like $11,000 a mile. No, $55,000 a mile.
For broadband?
11,000 per 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about 50,000 or so per mile by the time you have all the costs in. So it won't be cheap, but through this study that's taken us a couple of years, we have a really good inventory. We know where everything is, who owns it, and some of the public-private options that are available. There's companies that would invest if they had some help to cover those lower density areas, but they're not going to go there ever without some kind of partnership. So the high density areas already have pretty good service. We need to fill the gap between those to cover the rest of the county.
Do you know if there was any movement from the state to remove the fee that they were charging? They want all of the providers to go out, but then they said if you go across state land, you got to pay a fee. And I know we sent a letter,
Yep.
I believe, to the governor's office saying, look at this is kind of redundant.
So the state proposed if you're using their money, you don't have to pay the fee to be in the state right-of-ways on state highways. But their money is not going to cover all the work that needs to be done. So most of the money that's available is federal. And there's been, I know NISAC and others have petitioned to have the fees waived for any broadband
Right.
development in the state right-of-way.
But we don't know how that's come across any, no. It was just a thought.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? Roy?
Can we get a link to the larger report, even though you're giving us a summary,
Sure.
or a PDF?
I will attempt to email you the PDF. It's a really big file.
If it's a link to it on another website, that'd be fine too.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about that? All set? Okay. Joe, you're up. Soil and water.
Okay.
Good morning. I think just everybody here except for a couple new faces. For those of you that are new, I'm Joe Chevroletti, District Manager for Oswego County Soil and Water Conservation District. And today I thought I would just give just a real brief introduction to some of the things we're working on and such. Certainly more details as the year goes on and as accomplishments are made and things of that nature. But What I'm going to do is I do have just, with this sheet, I'm just going to give just a brief presentation on one particular project that we worked on that's kind of a, does everybody have one? That's kind of a good reference, I think, for a lot of the different projects and aspects that we do work on in the realm of conservation. So first, certainly just want to acknowledge the EDP and the rest of the legislature for very gracious or generous increase our appropriation last year. That's much appreciated. We do have a fourth staff member on board now. Will be official in the next month or so they've been on with us as a seasonal, and so in the next either week or the April board meeting, we'll have that made official, and they'll be on permanent basis, and then obviously have to go on and take their exam and such. They'll be on as a technician working primarily in invasive species programming, lots of GIS mapping and other sorts of things, and then some water quality projects as they come up as well. So last year was it's a very, very successful year for us. Lots of technical assistance provided throughout the county. Lots of good projects on the ground as well. So great year for conservation. And we do have the annual report that has some details, photos, and some figures and things of that nature that we'll distribute to the group, to the legislature and department heads as appropriate in the next month, so if it's not by the end of this month, early into April. And right now, our planning efforts are in full swing, really, for all of the different areas that we work in. So agriculture, agricultural projects, forestry projects, water quality, just the assistance in general, and also other general technical assistance, and then the major water quality projects that we have for municipalities, recreational trail clubs, things of that nature, and then educational events, and obviously you've heard a lot in the past about our invasive species control. There should be some new things added to that. We're actually looking into some biocontrol that we have access to through an invasive species management organization in this area that's tied into APHIS, federal agency, and so we're looking at some of those. We actually have potential for a couple different projects this year. So some pretty some decent projects coming up in all of those different areas. And then real quick, last year we talked about just a big increase in the technical assistance, and I've been with the district for I guess over 16 years now, and I think I'm not really surprised at the kinds of calls we get. It's just a huge variety of calls. So I think the major things we work on are shoreline erosion, drainage, pond construction, maintenance, stormwater issues, nuisance beavers, DEC and Army Corps permitting, and just a huge variety. We have access to a lot of different resources in-house. We have aerial photos, historical ones, mapping, all kinds of things, soils information. But all of it's a huge variety. It could be, in the past, just some odd things that have come up have been, perhaps a sinkhole in a yard, just some random, all of a sudden, there's a pond in someone's yard or something like that. We've helped people, we've led them to there's a leak in your, water pipes, things like that. So we'll do a lot of investigation. Generally, they do get a person on the phone, and within a pretty short time, we'll get some assistance to them. And so some of those assistance requests, they can be, a few minutes, a half an hour, something like that, provide some research, some literature on site, and then they can be pretty involved projects, like the one that I'll present here. And we work with everyone, really anyone in the county, every resident, agricultural producer, business owner, municipality, and in the county as well. All the most of the departments we've had some interaction with and over the years, and even at the we've even been requested to give presentations at the state level for soil water districts or ag and markets, and even beyond that. So lots of involvement with all sorts of folks around the area, all the other agencies, a lot of collaboration and cooperation, and the New York State DEC. So this one particular project, I'll just highlight this one. I thought this was a good one for 2021. is it's a snowmobile bridge project request, and our primary involvement with this is to work with that club and get together a permit application. So that's navigating that permit process can be very difficult, because now you do have a lot more strict regulations on both regulatory agencies. So you have the New York State DEC as well as the Army Corps that you have to navigate, and that can be difficult. And we will help, in a lot of cases, we'll help a private landowner with this as well. Last year we had a lot of requests for ponds for some reason. Seemed to be more than usual, and we would help those landowners navigate that. We'd even set up site visits, Zoom calls with Army Corps, DEC, things of that nature. But our first, when we get a request like this, our first role is to do an environmental review. So it's almost a seeker type review. We're looking for state-regulated wetlands, the what are called NWI, or National Wetlands Inventory wetlands. Not necessarily designated federal wetlands, but that's the ones that help you get in touch, with the Army Corps, or just a kind of a place to start. You're looking at classified streams, rare and endangered species, a cultural review, and then once you have all that, you can start preliminary communications with the DEC. What's involved, what kind of permits are involved, things like that. So that may even be a site visit with a DEC personnel, maybe some a Zoom call, phone call, whatever several email discussions, and eventually you can get to the point where you know what's expected, and you know what kind of permit you need and things like that. So if you look below, that's where on the bottom of the page you'll see a couple of photos of have to zoom myself out in the field doing some field work. So the bottom left you'll see just measuring water depth. On the right is just measuring the distance of this project. So you need a lot of different measurements, and essentially it's going into some sort of diagram or plan. And you're looking for bank full width and depth of water, all kinds of measurements, slope. And so we have to put that into some sort of a plan drawing to get this permit. And then if you'll flip the page, on the second page, you'll see sort of what this site looked like before, and obviously it's kind of anticlimactic, but you can look right down and see the after pictures as well. But with this particular site, obviously you can see anything would have been better than what was there. There's some safety issues, obvious water quality issues. This area had been flooded by beavers, and because this bridge was quite dilapidated and just reached reached the water level, actually. You need to have these things suspended, and because of that reason, it was very easy dam site, and that flooding certainly caused some issues, killed off some of the vegetation. Now you have some exposed shoreline. You can see the photo on the top right, unprotected shoreline. So these are all things where this is where we come in, and that the planning process. So we work collaboratively with the club as well as the DEC, and this was. The beginning stages take a few months before you can get a permit out the door. So I think we started discussions in January. The permit was delivered to the DEC in April, and then permit in hand by almost October. And there's some the timing is critical. There almost wasn't enough time, because once you do get the permit in hand, there are quite a few restrictions, and most of those revolve around trout and the spawning of different fish. And so, because once you do a project and you increase the sediment in a stream, this stream happened to be, not only was the area considered a wetland, but it was also a classified stream, which means it has the ability to support trout, or a trout spawning area, something of that sort. And so when you have that and you do a project, you increase that sediment level. Everybody's ever, you've seen a stream, looks like chocolate milk. That's usually the way people describe that. That sediment in there can get in the gills and obviously cause some decline to the population and can kill those species off. So that's important. There's a lot of some stormwater activities that have to take place. We've all driven around, seen projects, highway projects. We see the silt fence that's at the bottom of a slope, things like that. So that was incorporated into this project. There should be some seeding after to vegetate that area and hold that soil in place. And so all sorts of recommendations that we've made, worked with the DEC. It's usually, you also have to work with the Army Corps, but with both of them, it's usually you do the project, here's the application, here's the design. There's definitely some discussions and adjustments along the way. I don't know a whole lot of people that get their applications put through the first time, so there's usually some kind of return, some kind of communications, final design hopefully at some point, and then that goes that information goes back to them with hopefully an approval. So we were able to get this approved, and then you can see at the bottom the completed project. Certainly a better situation than you had before, as sort of as far as water quality. And we definitely have some other projects lined up with this group. A lot of things that we're looking into, and we're taking this level. We have some municipalities that we're working with, just helping them navigate that process, because the permit process, because it is pretty difficult. Sometimes on the Army Corps side of things, you can get, if you're lucky, you can get what's called a nationwide permit, and those they do play into transportation, recreation sometimes, agriculture is a good one, forestry. If you're lucky to get one of those, it's a lot easier, but otherwise that could actually delay this, and this project may not be getting done until this year. So, but it was a great project overall. We understand huge economic benefit from snowmobiling in this county and the Tuck-Hill region, so we're happy to be kind of a part of the micro level of that economic impact.
Roy, did you have a question?
Yeah, so the bridge replaced the culvert pipe?
I'm sorry, these, the couple photos are actually on a different site. I just kind of put those in for effect. But this is actually a different site, so I should have mentioned that. I apologize.
Whose property was it? Is it the power company's
Looks
property?
like
The actual bridge is on a, utility company property, but on the state trail.
And if anybody else has questions about the particular, I have other questions. Can you, so especially for our new legislators, just guess on the number of properties that we have in the county that you manage?
So this is off, like this was.
No, I know. I mean,
but
county-owned properties, just general information.
So we also, part of what we do is reforestation or forestry management on multi-use properties that the county owns, or the reforestation properties. There's 28 parcels, and that adds up to about 2,200 acres. And then we have had involvement in some of the other, the other ownerships as well, with Dave's department and Youth Bureau and things like that, or even solid waste at times.
And you manage, about how much of that is wetlands versus woodlands? Any thoughts on the 22,000 acres?
I don't have the figures off the top of my head. It's roughly 40% wetlands.
40%. And then you manage the rest of it for logging where it's makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep.
As part of your funding.
Yes. Yep. Correct. So it's managed for the timber sale revenue. We usually do one of those a year. We are involved in all of the boundary maintenance, signage, if there's any best management practices that need to be installed, permitting, all that kind of thing.
You bid that out?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So that's usually bid out once a year, and we partner with the.
You have a map of the county properties, right?
We do.
Yes. So is that something you could share digitally with the committee again?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You can do that.
And explain to them too the educational. There's two educational things that you really take care of.
Yes, absolutely. So you mean as far as like the conservation field day? So we have another individual that works on. She's the educator in the office. Title is senior district technician, but does both. Works on agricultural programs as well as education. And so our two major educational events are what's called the Envirothon, and she'll at some point be in to give full presentation on that. But in short, that's a competition for high school students, and they take exams in forestry, soils, wildlife, aquatics, and a current issue as well. And so they do that at the county level, and there's also a state level competition too. Our second largest educational event would be the Conservation Field Day, and that's for second graders. Usually in the 2 to 3 or so hundred individuals attend, when it's in person at Selkirk Shores. I don't know the outlook of that right now, but if we'll have that again in person. But we have done a virtual event, so essentially, regardless if it's virtual or in person, it consists of about 20. Forget the exact number, but there's over a couple dozen presenters that present to the students. They attend five presentations virtually. I believe they can obviously see all of them. And these can range from everything from to fishing, to waterfowl, to forestry, to water quality, recycling, all kinds of environmental based type type information. And it's really usually very hands-on too, as well as the environment. We try to make them both hands-on.
So other than private landowners that contact you for information and assistance, you talked about department collaboration. Who typically drives that and gets you involved? For instance, Dave's department does 239 reviews. I would expect that if they see something that they bring you in. But are you getting cooperation from the other municipalities and towns reaching out to you?
We do. We have sort of I think the favorites that seem to reach out to us more than the others. But one thing that we would like to do this year is to make our way around to the different towns, meet with the supervisor, anyone else they'd like at a meeting, and just explain what we do, what we have to offer, and also see if there is some other areas we need to grow in to fit the needs of the county municipalities. So, but we do quite a bit of work. We have several folks. We've had it work both ways. Departments might reach out to us with the county. We may reach out to them. And we've also had municipality can go the same way. Other agencies, the DEC, they often have oftentimes have refer folks to us. I think that may have been the case with this particular project. But that, it can work all sorts of ways. We have a lot of great contacts. It could be just a landowner calling us, and we may know the best route. It may not be us that can necessarily help them, so we know the best route. We'll get them in contact with whoever they need to.
I think a good example of what you're talking about, explain what happened in Mexico with the solar in the town.
So that's something, it's certainly still in the decision phase, I guess, as far as the town of Mexico, but we were approached by the planning board just to take a look at some of the surface drainage and any hazards that might be erosion hazards or anything like that might be associated with the solar project. Dave's office was heavily involved with the review of that as well, and so we just looked at some of the things that would pertain to just soil and water essentially. And have been at a meetings for a couple meetings, I guess, for that as well. But certainly just it did the same. We really kind of used the same model, looking at the kind of an environmental review, looking at wetlands. But this in this particular case, we really kind of literally zoomed in better, saw some some of the drainage, used some of the great aerial photos the county has and things like that to be able to see what's going on the ground, and just to offer our 2 cents in assistance.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I would just like to know what club it was and the location is, if possible.
Yeah, I can. If it's all right, I can email you that information there. Okay.
Joe's worked with most of the clubs from time to time. Bridges are a very common need. And even on the county trail, Joe's involved with those guys. A lot of times there'll be concerns about trees that may or may not be a hazard, and the clubs are required to get an opinion before they can go in and like they can trim brush, but they can't cut down a tree without checking with us and making sure that it's one that we believe needs to be cut, and if they're going to do it, what's the proper process, because they're not supposed to. We have some guidelines so that people aren't in there saying, oh, that tree really needs to be cut because it could be a hazard. Well, it turns out it's, like a really nice black cherry that could be used for other purposes if it wasn't there. So we kind of have to keep an eye on who's cutting what and when. And Joe responds to a lot of those calls on trail maintenance.
He also keeps our highway abreast of invasive species destroying some of the trees and knowing that they're going to be hazardous and they're going to be falling.
Yeah.
And that the highway needs to get them out before they fall, because we've had a lot of it with the invasive species attacking our trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Emerald ash borer is probably the worst one right now.
Yeah. Any other questions, Joe?
Gary, did you have something?
I just want to make a comment. I sit on the planning board in Mexico, and we're doing a site plan review for the solar farm, and I want to thank Joe and his department for attending our meetings and giving their opinions on the quality of the farmland and any other, water reviews and stuff that, questions that were being asked. And I'd like to thank Dave for their overall review of the project. So it's been very helpful.
It's nice to have a nice team, doesn't it?
It is.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for your time and all that you do for
Appreciate
us.
it.
All right. I know, it's amazing how he does all the stuff for people. That poor guy takes stuff home and everything. But,
Well, wait till Erica comes in with her show and tell.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, she always does something. Okay, Michael, why don't you take the floor and
So,
have at
step
it.
back here.
I
Cover
talk
your
a little
back.
bit slower. I apologize for that. That's my southern upbringing. The annual report of the County of Oswego IDA. You all have a copy of this report. It was in the package that was sent to you. I'm going to just hit some of the high spots in it. The annual report is a requirement for the IDA. It's an integral part of our reporting process to the New York State Comptroller's Office and the New York State ABO, Authority Budget Office. And it is a report that we do. Our fiscal year runs from August 1 to July 31. So it's kind of a split between 2 years. And the report is typically finished usually in October or so, or maybe early November, to be part of the Paris reporting that we have to do to the ABO and the Comptroller. Paris reporting is the public authority reporting information system, which is a lot of fun. Keeps people busy putting in information and data in that report every year. The agency was created by the County of Oswego, created in 1972. It has 7 members. Each member of the agency is appointed by the county legislature. And Gary behind me is the current chairman of the IDA, and Nick Canale is the vice chair of the IDA. And we have 5 other members. Tim Stahl from the county is also a member of the IDA. He's been serving on the IDA, I think now, but maybe going into his third year. I'm the CEO of the IDA, and Kevin LaMontagne, who was here last time, is the CFO of the agency. There's a lot of narrative in this, but it's in it because we need to report this information to the reporting entities that we report to, and but I'm just going to hit, instead of going through all this stuff, I'm going to hit a few high spots. We meet on an as-needed basis. We don't have a set schedule, but routinely we meet at least once monthly, sometimes twice. Last fiscal year we had 13 meetings held. And every project that the IDA is involved in that has at least $100,000 worth of financial assistance coming from the IDA is required to have a public hearing in the municipality in which the project is located. We held 12 public hearings last fiscal year. Public hearings are sometimes well attended, sometimes not attended at all. But each public hearing, notices are sent to the town supervisor or the village mayor, wherever it is located, chairman of the legislature, and the superintendent of the school district. They all receive notices that a public hearing is going to be held on the project. So they all have opportunities to come and listen to a summary of the project and have any comments that they want to make. There's a whole host of reporting requirements that the IDA has to do. One of those reporting requirements is called the RP 412A, which is when we enter into a pilot agreement with a company or a business. This is a form that has to be filled out associated with the real property tax law and the general municipal law, where we send to the assessor, to all of the entities involved, and that would be involved or impacted by a pilot agreement would be the town, village, county, and the school district. They all get a copy of the 412A, which has an attachment of the pilot agreement to that for their records. We filed last year 4 new projects with 412As, and we amended 3 pilot agreements and filed those amended pilot agreements with all the taxing authorities as well. The agency, our website lists all of the various multitude of policies that the agency has to have in place to comply with the ABO and to comply with some federal requirements, particularly relating to tax exempt financing, which the agency has the authority to do. They're all listed on our website. Is all the minutes of meetings, all the policies, the programs that we offer in terms of the applications for the for a pilot agreement or financing that the agency does. And it's a pretty comprehensive website that we maintain, and it's updated on a regular basis. That too is also part of the parish report, because a lot of that reporting is linked to our website, which makes it a little bit easier to do. A couple things that we did that was instrumental last year was the agency, after a number of years, looking at trying to expand the capacity of our industrial sites in the county. Dave was involved, former Chairman Gardner was involved in talking with the owners of the property down in Scruple that the agency acquired during this fiscal year, roughly 185 acres of land to expand the industrial park. Operations Oswego County owns the other half of the industrial park in Scruple, and we're basically, it's been a successful industrial park. We're really limited right now. We don't have acreage in our existing industrial park, larger than 20 acres or 25 acres that we can actually use for development. We're basically down to either small sites or no sites at all. So we needed to expand that industrial park in that critical part of Oswego County that is conducive to economic development and particularly manufacturing. And that was accomplished after a number of years. We probably worked on that for 3 years, 4 years or so.
At least.
We had tough negotiations with the owners. It was more than tough, but finally it worked out, and that property was acquired. And it's an integral part that Austin will talk about in a few minutes in terms of the process with the Build Back Better project. On page 10 of the application is a listing of the projects that the agency assisted during that fiscal year. There were 21 projects. Those projects create new or retain jobs, about 214 jobs, represent an investment of about $75 million. You mentioned solar, Mary Ellen, before the meeting started. Of those 21 projects, 7 of those were solar projects. So a third of our projects were solar. Those projects represent about 25 megawatts of power generation, about $33.8 million in investment, and they were distributed throughout Oswego County. There was 1 in the city of Oswego, 1 in Sandy Creek, town of Sandy Creek, 3 in the hot spot, the town of Richland, and 1 in Scriba and 1 in the town of Oswego. Of the 21 projects, 11 of those projects, 52% were funded and is in construction, and there was another 10 projects, 48% that have been approved and will be starting, construction starting soon if they hasn't already started. We in our financing programs, we had 9 projects that paid off their financing with the IDA during that fiscal year, representing about $600,000 debt that was paid off. We had no bad debt, no loans that went south during that fiscal year, which was good. The distribution of the pilot proceeds during that year of about $38.2 million. Proud to report that, because you always ask, you always think about the pilot proceeds, is revenue coming into the county and the school district and the towns or villages that are cities that are involved. Pilots are distributed on a pro rata share basis based upon current tax rates each year. The collection of the $38 million represented 77.8% of what normal tax would be if there wasn't a pilot. So the exemption was about 22% during last fiscal year, which is significantly better than the average statewide on that. So that's positive. And there's also a real summary. Our audit is also on the website. There's a little summary of that on page 12. On page 13, there's a listing of all of the properties that is owned by the IDA. We have a few properties, we acquired, roughly 190 acres that we acquired is on this listed as the Oswego County Industrial Park expansion. There was 3 sites, 3 properties that we acquired for that. The other properties that we own is Lake Ontario Industrial Park here in the city of Oswego that the IDA developed. We own a piece of property up in the town of Richland, about a 14-acre site that was initially acquired because we thought that the Fulton companies would need that property for an expansion, but the expansion based upon went the other way. It went north as opposed to coming south. And but we still own that piece of property. We own Columbia Mill site, which is a tough site to deal with, but the IDA has ownership of that. We own a piece of property that Hudamaki rents that we bought. It was a scrapyard. When Hudamaki needed to expand, that scrapyard was sitting in their backyard. And the IDA, in cooperation with the city and the Fulton CDA, we acquired that property from the scrapyard, got it cleaned up, and then leased it to Hudamaki for pretty much their distribution center down there. So that was one of those deals that we committed to back in 1995 when at that time Sealright was considering shutting down the Fulton plant and moving to Kansas. And that was part of the deal to keep them there, was we were going to create space for them to operate. Thank you. Not a cold beer, but it'll do. But that was typically a lot of the things we do with property acquisition is to facilitate either an expansion or a retention or in case of the industrial park, future growth in the county. And we acquired from the county for back taxes. We acquired about 200 acres or so at the former Miller site, for location of the former wastewater treatment plant, and another piece of property between the railroad tracks and 481. And we own about 3 acres from the city of Fulton for a future site for a manufacturing startup facility that the agency is planning on constructing in Fulton. Be happy to answer any questions either now, later, or whenever. If you got anything you want to ask about this report and or anything else going on, or the EDAR report that you get on a monthly basis, if you got any questions on anything in that, feel free to give us a jingle or shoot us an email. And
Okay, Marie?
Mike, how long typically does a pilot go on for?
In general, it varies. Most of the recent solar pilots are 15 years.
How long has Site Energy had a pilot for?
Scientists had a pilot. Well, if you want to know, science pilot is equal to what normal taxes would be.
For certain? I mean, how?
Yeah.
Why would they even be labeled a pilot then?
It's still in place.
Even though it's changed hands like 11 times?
The pilots, each case in which the ownership changed, there was always in the legal closing documents of the acquisition and assignment of the pilot.
You're making more money than God right now.
Well, they're paying, their pilot is equal to what taxes would be, and in some cases, it's actually more, a little
Yeah.
bit more than what taxes.
I could elaborate on that a little bit. They have a fixed payment schedule, and they've had a fixed payment schedule for as long as they've had a pilot. Their assessed value used to be much higher. It used to be in the $600+ million range. It's currently in the $200 million range, so they're paying about what their normal tax would be, maybe.
Why did it drop so?
They challenged their assessed value, and the local assessor had to change the assessed value. Other than that, I mean, we weren't involved in that process.
And it dropped probably to more than a half.
Yeah, I mean, they dropped from around 600 million to around 200 million.
With some companies, if they're on a pilot agreement, if they're comfortable with a pilot agreement, they don't challenge the assessor.
But in that case, because they had a fixed payment schedule, their pilot didn't drop because their assessed value dropped. We have other pilots where it's tied to assessed value, so and it's a percentage of what the taxes would be of normal tax. In that case, because it was a fixed payment, it actually worked out to the benefit of the county. Whereas if they had challenged it and it was a tied to assessment, you would have saw their payment drop by about 2/3. So in that case, it was actually beneficial to have that in place for that. So you didn't see a yo-yo payment of
I believe
here
their
and here.
pilot, I believe Vistra, their pilot right now, I think there's 3 more years left.
There's not much left to it.
3 or 4 more years.
So they have no ability to leave it just because it would benefit them at this point?
Well,
I mean, if it would benefit them, I mean, can you
Well,
cancel
they
pilot
can,
agreements?
They would have to do
yeah,
that.
they could cancel a pilot agreement if they wish, or it will expire at some point in time, or in some cases, a company wants to renew a pilot agreement, and in many cases, that's associated with a capital project that they're getting ready, like Novellas.
Right. They'd have to be doing something new to get a new
Yeah,
pilot that's gonna.
I mean, the purpose of a pilot is an inducement for economic development. You just don't give someone a pilot just to give someone a pilot. It has to have some economic development purpose.
Right, to answer your question, maybe they would be concerned of a near future increase in assessed value, so this gives them they know what their payment's gonna be. It's not gonna be based on whatever whim of the new assessor is gonna be saying what the property's worth from year to year. So,
Now, we have, in some cases, entered into a pilot agreement for purposes of retention of an industry. We did that with Silron. We structured a pilot with Silrite.
Silrite is now.
In 1995, and to help them.
So that was good.
And that pilot was and has been amended several times because they've added new buildings and invested money or invested heavily in machinery and equipment. So
Marie?
Mike, currently, how many pilots are in existence in Oswego County?
72.
There are a total of
72.
72.
39 tied to assessment, 33 not tied to assessment.
Can I get that list?
Why don't
Email
you
it to me?
send it to all of us if you can do it.
I'm at marieshad@yahoo.com.
If it's gonna go to the whole, is there someone I could send it to who could forward it to everyone, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'll be distributed to everyone.
Thank you.
And I do give it to the county on a yearly basis anyway, because one, they want to know what the estimates are going to be for the pilots for the next year, and two, just for good communication in terms of new ones that are coming on and ones that are coming off. We always want to let know so that there's no issues with properties, falling through the cracks on anything.
Thank you.
What and who determines if it's tied to the assessment?
It's on a case-by-case basis. It's negotiated. Typically, the IDA has a uniform tax exempt policy, which is tied to assessment, and that is the policy that we typically, if someone is going to come to the IDA, we would typically look at that. I mean, Gary and Mike, that's what we usually look at. They would have to request what's called a deviation, which could then be a not tied to assessment, where they would then negotiate either a fixed payment or a schedule that increases over time, or is tied to some other thing like a occupancy rate or something else. It's something that we don't initiate that. That would have to come from the project, and then the IDA board would then have to negotiate that and approve it.
they would have to justify to the board the reasoning behind their request for a deviation.
That also goes to all the taxing authorities too, who have 30 days to review it and make comments, at public hearing and other things before the IDA could approve.
And all deviations require outreach to all taxing authorities, summarizing and outlining the structure of the pilot and the reasons why the IDA is considering providing a deviation before it's actually voted on. Sometimes it's tied to the financing structure they have with their lender in terms of the importance of having some level of stability in terms of that cost.
Forecasting expenses.
So a list that you share with the county of pilots shows what year they're in, and does it show the schedule for each, or does it just show the year that they're in? And what happens with the pilots for anybody, new legislators, they obviously...
Yeah, I can add a column that says year what of
It's
what.
more expensive year.
So like year 2 of
Until it
15
gets
or
back
something
to
like
normal.
that.
That would be great.
Yeah. Sometimes they're aware of that stuff and then they don't need it because they already know that. But, if it was to be something to share with you guys, I think you'd want to know all that, because it's not something that's common knowledge on your end. Yeah, I could, in terms of what year it's in. There have been pilots that have been like what would be called an amended and restated because, say, a project that is already under a pilot agreement, say like Tailwater, does an additional project. And so if they were not to do a pilot that, or amend and restate, it wouldn't capture the new project. So they do an amended and restated, which doesn't take anything away from what was already being done on what was there before. It only would apply to the new portion of the project.
It's developed in stages where actually a portion of the exemption will go away and they'll pay full taxes on X up to X in terms of assessed value. And then the exemption is applied to the incremental increase in assessed value above. And we did that, I think we've done, Tailwater's had 1, 2, 3 going on right now on a 4th project. So it's been done that way.
United Wire's done it that way. I think a couple other ones. It's just a way we've kind of figured to say, let's not just restart the clock on everything. Let's try to keep what was in place for this up to this, what we call base assessment level, which is what the assessed value was before project, and then only apply the schedule to what happens after project. And it's a good way to do that.
Just to get a better understanding for myself. In regards to like the Miller property, they were on a pilot, right? So
No,
they weren't.
Way back
the
in the
brewing
day.
company never was on the pilot. Never was. They had
So
a
my,
tax exemption, 45B, but they never were, or everybody thinks
So that's a
that they were
separate-
exempted up
that's
to
a
wazoo,
separate
they
rate.
weren't.
so if someone, my general question is, if someone defaults on payments or whatever, does the pilot go away?
Is it default on a pilot payment?
Mm-hmm.
The pilot can't be, well, we're in that issue right now with litigation with Addis because they did default on a pilot.
So it can't just dissolve on its own, it has to go into litigation for you to pull them.
No,
It's like
well,
a bad loan, you want to try to collect what you can, right?
I mean, if they pay it, if they pay it and they can terminate it and walk away, yeah, that's fine.
And then when real property is disposed of, like this last one here, you sold a parcel, it looks like market analysis or an appraisal isn't required. just went by the-
Well, that piece of property is a piece of property that the agency acquired via a default in a debt in a loan. It was collateral.
Yeah.
So we took it.
We did do a full appraisal because the value of the land was so low. We had a market analysis done by a local real estate
Okay,
company.
because I'm a realtor and that piece for 8 acres, it seems crazy low.
It's
So my
You
question
should
is,
look at
what's
you
going
should
on
look at the
here?
property.
there are some circumstances around that property. It was landlocked and it had cleanup issues and some other things that it was only really valuable to maybe 2 property owners, which were the ones that abutted it, or else no one else would have had access to it. So, and we were able to get a business in there that was one where we had some real lemons and we were actually able to make some lemonade out of it. Because I was like, I don't know how we're gonna.
We would have never bought that piece of property.
Yeah, that was not considered a economic development.
So in general, you do try to get
Oh, yeah.
fair market value prices and so, okay.
We actually just had an appraisal done on property in Richland that just came in. So, for typically, that's something that is done.
So we're obligated to evaluate and put a price on a property if we're selling it or if we're acquiring it, to not overpay. I mean, we're a public authority, so therefore we have to comply with that type of analysis.
The other thing too that people should understand is that we're not like a real estate developing company who's going to just say the dollar value we get back for land is what's most important. Typically, the IDA has to look at their mission for every time they sell land or lease land or something and say, what are the jobs being created? What is the economic impact? And that is sort of looked at in the whole calculus of when we sell property, because we're not in it for the business of just selling land, or there's a lot of pieces of land we would have just sold off before. There's an opportunity cost associated. You do that, and then you don't have an opportunity to do an actual economic development project. So that comes into play. And like that one you'd mentioned, there was very limited potential for who would be interested in that property, and we were sort of able to take the Venn diagram of that, and then actually someone who would use it for a business and kind of overlapped and said, this is our chance to sell this thing and actually do something with it. We take it and did that.
The number of pilot agreements has somewhat escalated in recent years due to Mayor Barlow and the success of the rebuilding of the city of Oswego and the virtually every significant project in the DRI is in the pilot agreement.
Is that here? Right.
Last question.
Right.
Okay, we're holding her to it?
If we get money through a pilot agreement and we say we're gonna hire 10 people, but they don't, is what
So there's callback provisions.
callback provision?
It depends on the justification of why. I mean, if they didn't hire people because of the pandemic,
Right.
that's one.
No, pandemic excluded.
Well, and there could be other economic reasons, the industry that they're in could take a big nosedive. But anyway, it's evaluated. We do a survey every year where we collect data on the current number of jobs and the payroll of the business. Every year, as part of our audit of every business that we have a loan with or pilot agreement with, we collect as part of our confirmations with the audit, jobs on a certain date and the payroll on that date. So we monitor that.
That's ongoing.
So if there's, and we have had cases where some companies literally exceed what they project, and some companies don't quite get there. But I guess it's better to have 50% of the projections as opposed to having no percent of the. And there are reasons why some companies grow slower than they originally anticipate. We try to really, we want the company to give us in terms of the applications, that's where we get the baseline numbers from, a realistic. In the old days, I know companies, when they wanted to go to the state to get money, they would grossly overproject because they would get a bigger loan or a bigger grant. And then they wouldn't get it, and then the state would come back and the state would claw back some of that money. and get it back from the company. They would have to refund it to the state. We got similar type provisions, and fortunately, we really haven't had to execute those. The biggest issue, biggest issue we've ever had that's been a problem has been Rich's friend Addis, and the issue down there.
We've had many projects that have they created way more jobs than they said. Like we've had projects that have said we'll create 60 jobs, and they've created 200 plus. And we don't give them anything extra for that other than thank them and say, thank you for creating more jobs. But it's typically one of these where they're going to be very close to their number, maybe within a certain threshold under. But we have to report this, and Mike said we have to report this every year to the comptroller and others. And if there were issues where they were looking and saying, hey, listen, you said there was going to be this many and there's only this many, they would write that up and they would make that an issue, and we haven't had that.
And if there's some deviations in the audit that relates to jobs and stuff, I mean, we've had the comptroller's office to give us a phone call to explain. And in most cases, we haven't had any cases where what the explanation was acceptable, to the comptroller's office.
Roy, did you have something?
Yeah, I have 3 questions. So first of all, on page 5, you show an IDA annual employment survey completed. Is that something that's available? That's on your website, or how is that? What? IDA annual employment survey.
That's what is reported in the audit.
Okay. What is that?
That's the number of jobs.
Just,
the job,
okay,
the current jobs, as of a certain date.
That's the new and retained
The
numbers.
yeah.
Okay. Any plans for, or any ongoing incubators? We just have an incubator, and then we were going to do that with Price Chopper. The Price Chopper.
Well, mine became a problem. Yeah, I mean, we gave that away.
We didn't give it away. Don't say that. We sold it for what we bought it for.
Yeah,
we
we basically gave it away because
that hurt me too, because I really wanted that project.
Yeah, I know.
And
it was a cool project.
We had several $1 million of grant money for that project too.
Right, so that's why I just wanted to ask where are we going forward?
So what we did is we lost that opportunity. There really hasn't. We still have an incubator in the city of Oswego. It's an aging incubator, and it's sort of it's hard to meet and that was the purpose of why we were looking to make the new one with the Price Chopper. We're currently, and Mike had mentioned it, we had bought a 3-acre parcel in the city of Fulton on the former Nestle site, and we're trying to get the last piece of funding we're looking at doing a 30,000 square foot, we call it a manufacturing startup facility. It's not specifically an incubator with full incubation services, but it's sort of like an accelerator incubator for manufacturing projects. And
is that then going to be affiliated with CCC and the
I think we talked to them about partnerships I mean, they're not going to be formally like a tenant or anything like that, but we've talked to them about having the tenants of the facility looking to them to get training and things like that for their people.
It could be a great value for somebody there who's doing more advanced.
It was part of our decision-making process of looking at doing the project in Fulton. Say that.
Right. Okay.
So our focus, we want it to be a manufacturing. So we had conversations with the Advanced Manufacturing Institute.
We've invested in it as well, haven't we?
Yeah, we were a major investor in that.
And where are they about now? I know I've gone to a couple of the recent meetings, but I don't have a really...
I mean, they got the space, but I mean, they have significantly readdressed that. I mean, at one point in time, Carla had the idea of building a freestanding building at the campus down there for the Manufacturing Institute. Now it's back into the existing facility in a much smaller space. I think when people start putting construction costs, numbers and everything together, all of a sudden, you can't afford it.
Yeah, especially now.
And I think that's kind of what happened to that. So they're doing it, they're working toward doing it, but Carla's gone.
Well, there's huge commitments of equipment and money, and so, I mean, so it's kind of.
They're getting there. I know they've given a major update, I believe that was in January, of where they're in the process. When, I mean, I couldn't, that would be for them to say of when it'll be ready to go. But I know that they're, like everything else, COVID sort of slowed them down and made them reprioritize what they were doing in the short term. But I do know that they're moving forward on the project.
And they still do the classes. They still have the advanced manufacturing technology section that they're doing. And those graduates are getting pumped right into jobs. Are you, do you track, they have the work keys program going on there as well with the, are you guys helping them promote that at all to get businesses to use that? This is the work keys assessment.
The Act Ready.
Yes, I know that
we were a sponsor of that in the beginning.
Because I think we're still shy about, 30 or so businesses being part of that to be the first work-ready community in New York State.
I do know we promote it. We also, Mike is on the Workforce Development Board and helps and gets updates on that stuff. I think that, so you said they're what, 30 shy?
I know they're shy. I know I can't remember the exact number. I attended the last Workforce Development Board meeting too, and
I think a lot of the initiatives on that kind of lost some momentum.
Yeah, well,
when Carla left.
Well, I'm trying to help them restart that.
We gotta go.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We're reaching up towards 11, where another committee's coming in, and I still think you want to talk about Build Back Better.
Yeah.
Austin's gonna talk about it.
Austin, so.
Sure. I just want to give you guys an update. So last time I was here, I let you know that we are one of the component applications for one of the 30 finalist regions. The deadline for applications is March 15th, so 2 weeks from today. We've made a lot of progress. I just want to let you guys know. So of the 8 projects a part of our region, there's 5 of them that are sort of what I would call building or infrastructure bricks and mortar projects. And there's 3 of them that are more workforce development and educational related. We are one of those bricks and mortar project. We're the Oswego County Industrial Park expansion. We're calling this the Smart Systems Supply Chain Project. What we're looking at is along with our project, there's the many people may know the White Pines mega site in Onondaga County, northern Onondaga County. It's about 1,200 acres. They are competing for a massive semiconductor chip fab plant, and so we're looking at this. Our site is 185 acres. There's no way it's large enough to support a massive chip fab plant, but we can support all the supply chain businesses, both on the material, the front end and the back end, in terms of doing many of the supporting and complementary businesses. So that's what we're trying to focus this on. Our project, we're looking at, on paper, we're looking at anywhere between 700,000 and 1 million square feet of building being built on that land, and looking at, now obviously these are modeling. It's not necessarily what will happen, but it could be anywhere from 650 to 1,200 jobs could be developed on that site. This is our site we're talking about, not the White Pines. It could be more, it could be less. I mean, if White Pines is able to land a chip fab plant, from what I've heard, that could support 4,000 to 5,000 jobs on site, and it could support multiples of that in the region outside of it. So, a lot of the things, that we are looking at hinge on something happening there, but we have alternative plans for our property as well. Some of the other projects in the region, like I said, it's White Pines. We have our project, which is the expansion of the industrial park. Mohawk Valley Edge in Oneida County is looking at doing a flex building as part of their project, and that's within the same industry of the smart systems, another project is the expansion of the Tech Garden by Center State CEO in the city of Syracuse. The development of what's being called the Syracuse STEAM School by the city of Syracuse, and that's in that school district, that's to develop students who have a background specifically in STEAM academics. There is the Workforce Coalition, which is SU, all the SUNYs, most of the colleges in the region, and that's related to workforce being developed for the Smart Systems Cluster. There's UAS, which is the Unmanned Aerial Systems. I've heard now that that's now being called uncrewed aerial systems.
Uncrewed?
Yeah, they changed the. I don't know if they just didn't like the word man in it, so they changed it. I'm not sure where that one came from.
Unpersoned?
Yeah, so that's part of this cluster, because the Smart Systems Cluster is around, like I said, it's chip fab manufacturing and supply chain. It's looking at drones, it's looking at sensors, it's looking at 5G technology. It's looking at all these things that are being developed now, but that 5, 10 to 20 years from now are going to be our what our industries are about, and we don't want to miss the boat. And then there's also one that's a quantum research project. That's another educational project and part of that workforce and educational component. So of these 8 component projects, it's about $85 million in EDA requests. EDA is the federal agency who is sponsoring Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And as I said before, there's 60 overarching applicants left, 60 regions, which we are one. And I was in a EDA webinar last week. They are going to fund a minimum of 20 regions. So there's a third of a chance. However, when we've also been working with Dave Votar at Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board, who said that, listen, of those 60 applicants, it's easier to apply for phase 1 than it is to apply for phase 2. Phase 2, you got to show local matching money. You need to do the engineering work, which costs money. A lot of these places, it didn't cost them anything to apply for phase 1. But when it comes to phase 2, you have to put actual money together. You need to have these people actually collaborate and work together. So 60 applicants could easily become 40 or 45. So at that point, you got a 50-50 shot of getting funded. And that's if they only fund a minimum of 20. They may fund more.
Well, the good thing from our timing standpoint on this thing is that because of the Scruple expansion that's been on the drawing board for a number of years, we have done an extensive amount of engineering work with CNS on the development of that property. So we had a good chunk of the application already prepared in advance of this opportunity.
And as I mentioned, some of those other projects, if the names, the majority of them are urban and suburban in nature. We're the only project that's rural in nature, and they specifically stated in this regional challenge that they want to see projects that improve equity, resilience in both urban, suburban, and rural. So I think that really being the only project that is within the region that is specific rural in nature, I think that really does help us, and they look at our project as a key strategic component. So.
Gives us a nice leg up then. And with the front and back end of the chip, you're not talking manufacturing where there's a great deal of water or waste.
Right.
So that makes
Correct.
it a lot easier.
Correct. But because we're 8 miles away from White Pine, there's some significant advantages to having these sites sort of interconnected for, like I said, supply chain versus the actual chip fab on site.
Now, do they have a big enough site in White Plains to take care of the chip?
The White Pine?
White Pine?
Yeah, they got 1,200 acres.
1,200, yeah.
Yeah, so that would
they
give
have
them, they could do it all there.
Onondaga County and the Onondaga County IDA has been assembling that site now for about 8 years.
What we've been told is that when these mega facilities come to your community or come to your region, it's kind of like all the other supply chain businesses that come along. It could be anywhere from 120 to 200 other businesses that are kind of part of that. So what you're trying to capture is that, and so White Pines cannot support 120 to 200 businesses on site.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, that they couldn't do it all.
No.
Okay,
No.
good, so we
And
can make.
I think what they're trying to focus on is that when these plants build, it's such a massive, we're billions, tens of billions of dollars. And so what they want to say is we want to put like a kind of like Novelis, they want to kind of stack up these modular sort of refineries together because there's economy of scale with that. They don't want to take up on that 1,200 acre site these other ancillary businesses because that's taking away from them being able to put another modular, fabrication facility.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
from my perspective, and like I said, this is my perspective, is that they would want to maximize that as much as possible with
When will
fabrication.
we know the next step or decision?
August.
August, September. So they said September at the latest, we should know if it's been funded or not.
What's the projected investment amount we would need to be in
So,
the game?
Great question. I should have mentioned that before. So our application we're putting in, and let me explain what we're putting in for. UDA money can only be used for public-owned assets. So what we are requesting is $7.5 million for our project, which will go to put in new sewer, new water, new roads, also do site clearing and some site grading for that acreage, which will then all, public utilities and publicly owned land. We are putting up a $2.5 million local match that has been approved. And so that's what EDA has said is that they are looking for projects that have skin in the game. When we definitely have that. We're not asking for 100% funding for the project.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions to Austin, Mike, or Garen? Right?
You guys, have you met before?
Last meeting.
Yep. Oh, okay, good. So I
Thank you.
didn't know if everybody needed sort of a little new introduction.
Thank you.
So, if there's no other questions or anything,
I'll move to adjourn.
entertain that motion. Second,